Hey friends, welcome back to the Love People podcast. Today I'm talking with someone who's super cool. I'm talking with one of my mentors, Mandy. Hey.
Hey.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be on here. We are going to be talking about something really important, learning to love every part of yourself. So I'm really excited to get into that and talk about that with you today.
I'm so excited.
Okay, so before we get into everything about learning to love yourself, just tell us a little bit about you and who you are, what you're about, and how you came to faith and all that fun stuff.
So cool. Okay, so my name's Mandy, and I guess going back way back in the day, my family moved to this area in 1995. I think I was about 2 years old when they moved from Arizona to Danville, and I grew up going to I went to CPP, so the preschool at Community Presbyterian Church, and so that's, I guess, how we got our start. Super thankful for that. And then I went to the Christian Academy, and then to San Ramon High School, go Wolves,
Yeah, let's
for
go.
high school, and then down south to Pepperdine, where I played Division I soccer for 2.5 years until I injured my back. And then I ended up staying there to complete my MBA, where I studied finance. And then after that, I worked in commercial real estate in Manhattan Beach for a couple of years, and then moved back up here. Probably now it's like four or 5 years ago. And I met my husband volunteering at Rock. So it was kind of a full circle story. Back at Rock, didn't go much in high school, but later on, I was like, that was such a cool opportunity that I missed, and I wanted to get involved. And so, yeah, super thankful for that. And now I work in commercial finance at a bank in San Francisco. And all my passion hobbies are pretty much coaching soccer. I coach at San Ramon, coached a little bit for Contra Costa Christian, and then helping out at Rock still, volunteering with now the freshmen, since my favorite seniors graduated.
So sad. So sad we get to leave you, but we're happy for
I
the freshmen that
know.
they get to, have you. And I just remember it's so cool because I remember my freshman year when you were our leader. And I just remember I just thought you were the coolest person because you are. And I was like, oh, I played soccer at the time. And I was like, oh, this girl plays soccer. She gets me. She loves the Lord, all these things. And so I just remember I would always come ask you questions, and you just were so wise, and I just loved your advice. And I just always too
Oh,
wanted a mentor. That was one thing. I was like, I always wanted a mentor that just was older than me, had gone through more of life, and you were just always there. So I love that.
oh, so sweet. I love that. Oh, yeah, I remember. I just remember you like all the way back as a freshman. I'm just like, I so get this girl. I get what she's going to, but it's like so cool that you cared about your faith like that early on in high school. But anyway, I digress. Mutual love.
I love it. And I love the story about you and your husband at Rock. That is the cutest thing ever. I didn't even know you were dating someone at the time, and you were talking to him, and I was like, Mandy, who is that guy? And you're like, oh, we're dating. And I was like, oh, let's go. I don't know how I didn't know, but I was like, she always talks to this guy. What's up with that?
That's so funny. Actually, now that you're saying that, I remember that exact moment when you're like, oh, and I was like, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, we've been dating.
Oh, that's so cute.
So funny.
I just love that. And so you basically grown up in this area all your life, and you have made your way back. Did you ever want to come back to this area after college? Did you ever have
No,
the idea?
no, I didn't. Honestly, I think there's like, it could be me like almost impressing a generalization on everyone that I went to school with, but I would say that it's like not cool to be back in Danville like after you graduate. And if you
Mm,
are going to move back to like Northern California to your hometown, pretty much everybody moves to like San Francisco or like
yeah.
Silicon Valley, depending on if you work in tech and whatnot. But yeah, super super not cool to be at Danville, but I was so grateful in that
Mm,
season to come home. And like I never want to I never want to have a point in my life where I go total burnout, needed a rebrand, or like total
Mm,
burnout, needed a restart or whatever. But I actually, looking back on it, that I actually did really reach that point in Southern California where I had burnt myself out and I needed
mm,
rest. Like I was desperate for a break. And I remember, I remember the day that I moved out of, I was living in Brentwood, Southern California, and like my parents, like total like prodigal daughter moment. Like my
mm.
dad came with the big what do you call them? Like the U-Haul trucks. And he was like, don't worry, we're gonna move you out of here one clean sweep. And like I
Oh,
remember like just packing up all my stuff with my family. And it was the best feeling. Like I think
mm,
it was just like something, it was a moment I'll never forget because I do feel like nothing's been as clear as like you need to leave this place. And looking back on it, it's not the place, it's not like, oh, like like LA, like Santa Monica, like it's that place that was the problem or those people that were the problem. But I think I had like a restless heart in that
mm.
season. And so leaving was just such a good feeling because I'm like, I know from this point on, I'm like now going to start like making decisions that point to health, which one of those was plugging back into faith and thinking really hard about like who I was surrounding myself with. So
That's so
yeah.
true. I love
Yeah.
that. Oh my gosh, that's so good. Okay, so then I have a fun question for you that I've been asking a few people on the podcast. What is one word that you would use to describe your like faith or your faith journey, and why?
Okay, so I kind of heard like word on the street from the other people who you interviewed that you were gonna ask this question, and I've been watching your podcast, and I have to tell you, this is gonna be so annoying. I can't pick one, but I have two, and I can explain them
Okay, perfect.
if that's allowed. Okay.
Yes, yes.
So, and they kind of rhyme, so it's like kind of catchy. But I would say foundations and transformations.
Mm,
And foundations has to do with I talked a little bit about like my parents' decision to send me to Christian preschool. It's not like I don't think I think the Lord can work in so many ways that it's not like that was going to be the only way that I encountered Jesus. But I'm so grateful that they wanted to expose me to the faith so early on in such a protected and like cultivated environment where faith was incorporated into my life. And the Bible even talks about like raising your children in faith so that when they grow old they won't turn away or they won't
mhm,
forget their faith. And I think that I read that verse recently. I probably need to double check the reference. And I know I'm kind of mixing this, not verbatim Bible scripture, but just the overall like impression of like parents raising their kids in faith and like how important that is for their faith later on. And so that foundation for me really was set early so that even in the seasons of kind of wrestling or feeling like my life was incomplete, like Jesus was the first person that I like thought of or that I like turned to where I was like, I need to change and I think it's going to happen um, through faith. There's something that's off with my faith that's been off with my faith for a few years now, and I want to resolve that, and I want to almost like reconcile, I guess, with the Lord. So
mm,
foundations have been super important in my faith, and even now, it's not like like 5 years ago, I decided I'm going to recommit myself to faith. It's like every day that I choose to spend in the word and thinking about like who my community is and the people I surround myself with, and then habits that my husband and I have, even within our relationship and our families. Those
mhm,
foundations are still being built. So foundations and then transformations, because you can definitely have the foundations laid like for you early on, or that you pursued faith really hard during a season. But I think it takes a true encounter with the Lord. I think a lot of people do have a turning point where they either learn to trust him with something or become vulnerable in a way that invites him into their life. And so I do feel like I had a moment of transformation, which I guess ties into, I don't know if I answer that question of like how I came to know Jesus, but I would say I knew Jesus when I was young, when I was growing up. But I learned to trust Jesus and decided to follow him with my life in a season where I was going through just a really like oppressive anxiety, and maybe a little bit of like that maybe like exacerbated just feelings of like sadness. So I definitely felt a little bit depressed, but for anxiety, I was having like speaking regularly with like counselors and Christian counselors, just kind of trying to wrestle through that. And it just came through like basically like obsessive negative thoughts about myself.
Mm.
And that had me so like beat up to the point where I was like, I don't think I know that I can't go on living like this. And I don't want to like live like this. Like, I don't think anybody should feel this way. And it's a weird thing with anxiety where you know that like you shouldn't feel this way. And by
Mm.
telling yourself you shouldn't feel this way, you shouldn't feel this way, this is wrong. And people who know faith, it's even worse. You go, well, I'm a Christian. Like, I really shouldn't feel this way. Like, I know the Lord, I know this isn't what he, has for my life. I shouldn't feel this way. And I think it was when I made the decision that I'm like, I'm gonna go after the Lord with my whole heart. And I'm gonna try to, you know, like the Bible talks about, when you seek him, you will find him when you seek him with your whole heart. I
Yeah.
think though, with your whole heart, like that's why it's so important uh to spend time meditating on scripture, because it's like, it's not just like you'll seek him and you'll find him. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually when you seek him with your whole heart, and like you have to make time for him in your life. And so I woke up every morning, I'd read Jesus Calling, I'd read the supporting verses, and then I'd turn to the New Testament and I would try to find out like, who is this Jesus. I turned off like pop culture, like music in my car. I only listened to worship music, and I only listened to basically uplifting like Christian music or worship music. And I protected my ears and I protected my heart and I protected myself from social media. I just got off of anybody that was going to be any sort of negative influence, which pretty much just had to do with like stereotypical kind of just like LA high fashion drinking culture. I just like canceled that. And I'm like, you
Mm-hmm.
know what, I'm gonna do everything I can. So I know that I've really tried to go after Jesus, and he 100% like met me in that place. And he said he
Wow.
would, like that's like he says that when you when you seek him with your whole heart, you'll find him. And I did, and that was transformational for me, because I know during that season, like I kind of, it was an isolating time where I felt like he was my only friend, and
Mm.
he really was the only friend that like I needed. And I also learned to surrender what I didn't know. And because I'm
Mm.
somebody who like doesn't do well in uncertainty. I like
Mm.
everything predictable,
I'm the
everything
same way.
needs to
I'm
have
the
an
same
answer.
way.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
it drives me nuts when people tell stories and they leave it on like a cliffhanger. Like that drives me nuts. I'm like, I'll be like, it'll be hours later, and I'll be like, wait, so what ended up happening to that guy? Like, and all, or what happened like in that movie? Like all, like I have to know how things end, because it'll just like drive me crazy. And so I had to get comfortable being uncomfortable. And that's like life in the tension of like being a Christian. And I started doing this thing where I'd go, you know what, Lord, like this like intrusive like thought in my head doesn't make sense. Like this negative
Mm-hmm.
thought or feeling of doubt doesn't make sense, but I know you see me. And like I would just start surrendering thoughts, like almost like taking those thoughts like in my hands and just like throwing them up to God and being like, this doesn't make sense, but I know this, like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't make sense how I could feel this way, but I know you understand what I'm going through. And I think through like trusting that he saw me, and like him showing me the ways that he saw me and wanted to take care of me, that was transformational for my life, because I just found out that he was uh real,
Mm.
and he was revealing himself to me. And so yeah, so that would be like transformations. Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, girl, everything you say is so good. This is what I love. This is what I love talking to you. And it rhymed. Like, come on, that's awesome. And I just, oh my gosh, there's so much I want to say about that. And when you're talking about the foundations, I was reading Matthew yesterday, and it was talking about the parable of the soil and like which soil you're like
Mhm.
planted into, like which soil a seed drops onto. And I was just really, I've been recently trying to really meditate on like the word and like what he was really talking about and like what Jesus was
Mhm.
trying to say, because that was what Jesus was telling the people. And he said this kingdom of heaven is like the seed. And I really was like, I want to be like the seed that is planted on the good soil, because then it
Mhm.
has the roots that when like
Yep.
the sun comes out or when like the wind blows, like it's rooted in that. And I love how you said like your parents put you into that. And even like though you went through life, you still like knew and had that like firm foundation that like you believed in God and that he was always there for you no matter what, and that you could come home whenever, you were ready to do that.
Yeah, that's so cool. Yeah, I love that that connection too, because that parable really does, like, it's such a good reminder of the importance of having that like foundation for just like for life. And I think about like how thankful I am to have had that foundation that was like good soil. And I think
Mm,
like just like to add almost like imagery or visual to that, it's kind of like I had good soil and there was probably a time where I was like producing good fruit.
hmm.
And then it's kind of like when you like we have a lemon tree in our yard right now, and that thing's totally unreliable. But there was a season where it was producing such beautiful fruit and like we were so
Mm,
stoked. And then the winter came and it froze it and it
mm,
like killed it. And I think there was a season in my life where like the storm came and like I basically like I don't want to say like I died spiritually, but I was
mm,
spiritually like deprived, and it made it so that I bore no good fruit, and I
mm,
don't think people would have known that like I was Christian. And like, if Jesus is our gardener in this example I'm giving, I really feel like he came and
mm,
he almost like I guess like grafted or like trimmed the tree in a way
mm,
that it added new life, and it was all his doing. Like I really feel like he came and he like nurtured me like back to life again so that I could then go and produce good fruit. And it's a reminder of like, when the storm comes like in life, because I don't think there's, unfortunately, there's not usually just one storm, there's
mm.
multiple
Yep.
tests that you get put through. But like this time, like I want to like be ready to protect myself like from that, because I don't want my fruit to die.
Hmm.
Like even in like the worst storms, like I want to make sure that I'm still like staying close to like the source of
Mm.
life so that like I can make it through those like winters. So yeah, foundations over and over again. Like,
So good.
yeah, I think that's just good.
Having
Yeah.
your roots so deep that like nothing can shake you and you can still have the nutrients and all that. So good. No, I
Yeah.
love that. And I loved how also when you're talking about the transformation, you kind of were touching on what the whole podcast is about, kind of about loving yourself. And I think I just thought you would be the perfect person to talk about this with, because like my experiences with you have just been, I just see you with this like almost humble confidence in who you were, and who you are created to be. And it's not like a confidence like the world's definition of confidence of like, oh, I'm better than people and I'm like all this. It's like I know I am in Christ. So that's how I can like overflow and love other people and show them that love. So what has been like you said, your experience of, like you said, reminding yourself who God created you to be and also loving every part of yourself? Because I think we all walk through that, especially as like girls,
Mhm.
and guys too. But like comparison can be like the thief of loving yourself. Social media now is makes it even harder. I think
Mhm.
we're in an age where it's really hard to love every part of yourself because you get to see the best of everyone else on like social media, and you get to see it in life, and
Mhm.
everyone puts out the best of their life and like fitness plan, what I eat in a day.
Mhm.
And so it's really hard to focus on like yourself when you get to see all of these other people. So what has your been your experience, and how have you come to the point that you're at now?
Yeah, I think this is such a good topic. And specifically my mind, and I'll try to keep it more general, but my mind definitely goes to there's like a statistic that I don't want to misquote, but it's a very high percentage of girls by the age of it's like 14 have already decided that they actually I think it's younger than that. And it might be even like 11. They've already decided they don't like their body and they don't like the way that they look.
Mm.
And I think that that is heartbreaking because I would imagine just with social media, I don't actually think that the enemy of comparison is coming necessarily in real life form. I actually think it's coming through their phones. They've convinced
Yeah.
themselves from what they're looking at and what they're subscribing to that they're not pretty enough. And the problem with that is we're always seeing a final result of beauty. So we're seeing it in its most basically unauthentic or inauthentic form. So
Mm.
we're seeing it after the airbrushings happen, after half of someone's thigh has been cut off to give them quote unquote the legs, after, any like arm fat has been removed. Like it's amazing. The nose has been made more symmetrical. All of the makeup, all of the hairstyling, the blowouts, like it's really crazy that like with enough money and with enough like content curation, anybody really can be a supermodel. And if anything, like that's a great thing to remember because it's like if with enough money anybody can be beautiful, then it's like why do we put so much like emphasis, I guess, like on that? Like why do we pursue like beauty so
Mm.
much? And I think I mean like from what my experience was is that a lot of it is beauty makes people have inward confidence, internal confidence. So external beauty gives people internal confidence, and the problem with that is really just the fact that that is making it so that your sense of self-worth is based on your level of appeal. And then for
Mm.
like guys like eyes, like your level of sex appeal. And that
Mm.
is so not like think about like how like think about like how much like Jesus loves you and he's already told you you're worthy. So with like every like stroke of the brush, with every like curling of the hair and the like killing yourself at the gym, it's like
Mm.
you are missing that like Jesus has already told you you're worthy and you're enough. And I have found that the women who are most beautiful are actually the ones that spend less time in front of the mirror trying to make themselves look more beautiful and instead like spending more time in real life community
Mm.
and in spending like time with the Lord, like in the Bible. And
Mm.
that helps give them this assurance like about their life that you're not going to find when you look to the world and you're looking for everybody to tell you like how good you look or
Yeah.
commenting on like such like superficial features about you.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of keeps me in check because I realize too like, and this is just like a personal decision I made, but I realized that like if I spend enough like time, like I can like totally make myself up to the point where like I don't want to say I'm unrecognizable, but like I like can really be like people are like whoa, and like it's actually really funny. Sometimes I'll do it for work and like they'll be like people will be like whoa, and it's because I'm so like I don't wear makeup because I don't like that it makes me feel I had to catch myself in the lie of like if I put on makeup and if I look better then I'm more worthy. And so I've actually
Mm.
made the decision like for my heart that like it's not like I'll never wear makeup, but I never like get ready to the point of feeling like I've kind of like lost myself in my looks. And it's actually like hard. Like it's not like I'm just like lazy and like don't want to put on makeup. Like I actually there are times where I really want to and I'm just like I can't do it like because I just don't want to lose like because the Lord did have to like work in my heart to open my eyes to that because I definitely for a period of time was living like a more like shallow, superficial, appearances driven type of life where I was so desperate for like just approvals and people to give
Mm.
me like a compliment. and
Yeah.
like tell me that I look nice. And what's hard about that is that I actually found like all the people that I was trying to impress, like they're no longer a part of my life anymore. And
Hmm.
they weren't ever my real friends. And like that lifestyle was like not healthy or sustainable. So I'm like, it must not be about the looks. And I found out that like the most confident I've ever been has probably been when like I've, been the most like overweight, like by like standard terms, the most like under like just like dolled up, like basically like no makeup. And it's because I just learned to see myself from like the Lord's eyes, which is like he's looking at my heart. Like he's not looking at, my beauty. And so yeah.
So good. I love how you said that. Like the Lord does not look at our outward appearance. He looks at our heart. And that's just so like such a good reminder because this world will look so much at our outward appearance and all that.
Mm-hmm.
But if your heart is not in the right place, then
Mm-hmm.
like none of it matters. That's what I realized too. Like you could be the prettiest girl or prettiest
Mm-hmm.
like cutest guy, but if you don't have a good heart, like it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And looks really don't matter. And I think for the longest time, I can relate because I same thing, social media especially. I remember I would just post things to get certain amount of comments and likes and put out this like persona of myself that just like wasn't true. It was like the best photo out of like 1,000. I'd like
Yeah.
go on vacation and like me and my sisters take all these photos. I would like choose this one, post
Yeah.
it, and it would make me feel better for a little bit, and then that would just like go away. It's like this kind of reassurance, but it's not lasting. But then when I met Jesus, I
Yeah.
was like, I had no desire to post stuff to like prove I was pretty because like
Yeah.
like I don't have to
Yeah.
prove that to anyone. Like God already knows
Yeah.
me. And also too, I was thinking like, who knows you best, honestly, if you think about it? God does.
Mm-hmm.
Like God created each and every one of us in our mother's womb, and he gives all these specific gifts. He like knew who we were going to be. And so why are we letting so many people who don't even like know us as well as God does like dictate our confidence in ourselves? We should be letting
Yeah.
the Lord do that. And that's one thing that really like set me free because when you look for others for your like self-worth and
Mm-hmm.
like who you are, it just is really like detrimental because if you don't
Yeah.
get that, then you're gonna be like sad or you're not gonna like yourself even more because you're not getting, I guess, many comments or
Yep.
all those things.
So good. I think like something that comes to mind too is like um it's like definitely kind of like a well-known verse, but I feel like it applies perfectly. Romans 12 talks about like not conforming to the world any longer, and it
Mm,
says do not conform to the patterns of this world any longer, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, and then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. And that comes up with beauty for me too, just from the sense of like you think about conforming to the patterns of this world, it's basically letting the world tell you like what's beautiful, like what is
mm,
worthy, what is valuable. And it's so sad that that like people can get locked into that like paradox and thinking that by like being more beautiful, you're more valuable. And also like
mm,
something I've been thinking about, especially with like high school students, and I'm sure in college, I think just like some of the quote unquote like hype starts to reduce a little bit where people aren't as drawn to like gravitating towards that like one thing that is like shiny and beautiful and all that. But it's just interesting, like sometimes there's a culture around like think about like there's one pretty person, and by someone else attesting that beauty, suddenly people are flocking towards that going, oh, you're so right, like they're so pretty. And when you're doing that, when you're participating in the hype, it makes you start like you can't say those things without thinking about why you're not like that and
mm,
like what you need to do to get on that level. And it's like who like you're driving like the distorted beauty by participating in like isn't she just like aren't her like her like eyes are perfect, she's so skinny and like so fit and like
mm,
all this stuff. And it's like while you're doing that, you're setting it like a standard for yourself and like making yourself believe like this lie. And I just think it's really harmful for the heart because it makes you start to feel like yeah, like you are not worthy until you start being like that person. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, just like that's something that I've been trying to like think about too. Like you never really escape that. Even like when you're done with like high school and like college, like you're still surrounded by basically like, yeah, those false expectations of like beauty. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yeah, trying to remember that like what the world is telling you is not the same thing that God is telling you. So just being able to like have that separation so important.
So good. I relate to this so much because I was best friends with someone from, I think it was like started in sixth grade all the way up till like freshman year. All the guys are like obsessed with her and they're like, she is like the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And I was always her best friend. And like no one ever said that about me. And it can be like really, sad when like you have like a best friend or like someone or you see someone talk about someone like you're friends with all the time about how they're so pretty. And I think at that time, this is before I knew the Lord, but like it was so hard on me because I'm like, is there something wrong with me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
why, like, am I not pretty enough or
Mm-hmm.
whatever? But what I realized too, someone said this, and it really was just so true. Like, God only made one of you, one of each and
Mm-hmm.
every one of us. Like, He doesn't want two of the same person. Like, He created us all with our specific gifts, with our, like, all these things because like Caleb talked today at the Sunday service, like everyone is a part of the body of Christ. Like we need to have an eye, we need to have a hand, we need to have an elbow, like all of these things,
Mm-hmm.
and we can't all be the same person. And so when I would like compare myself to my best friend, it just like it didn't do anything. It doesn't like comparison. That's one thing that like stole
Mm-hmm.
joy from me because I didn't think I was enough.
Yeah.
And so then when I started realizing who I was and stepping into like who God created me to be, because I'm not that person. I wasn't ever created to be them.
Yeah.
I can only be the best version of myself. I can't be the best version of them because they were created to be
Yep.
them. And so I think when we stop comparing ourselves to other people, it also helps us focus more on ourselves and the purpose and person God wants us to live out and be created to be.
So true. That's so good. Yeah. And it's so true. Like it's hard it's hard being a friend. And I felt like I've been in that same situation before of like, of the beautiful girl, the girl that
Mm,
everybody has decided that it's like, yes, that, that is the epitome of beauty. And I think it also is interesting to like think about the role of like, of that person too, is now they have like the weight of the world on their shoulders
yeah.
to keep being beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much that comes from that when it's not kept in check, like just like extreme, like just from like body dysmorphia to like eating disorders,
Yeah.
and trying to play the part and having like friendships that are so shallow. Yeah, beauty is definitely it's something that the word that comes to mind with like for me with like and on topic of beauty is really like discipline. Like I think you need to stay disciplined with your faith because like every day we wake up and it's like there are so many things like coming at us that it's like we need to like stay in close, like the closer we stay to like the Lord and his truths and like what he says about us. And it's like the less we're letting our minds wander to those places of like insufficiency and low self-worth and low value and like materialism and lust, like that is
Yeah.
how we protect ourselves. And it is interesting how like I guess an example that comes to mind, like for me, is definitely like when I was playing like sports, I had an injury before my back injury, and it kept me out for like 4 months. And
Mm,
this was never diagnosed as like a clinical, like, like eating disorder, but it was more like it could fall under the genre of like bad college diets,
mm,
um, bad, bad college athlete diets. I remember like putting so much pressure on myself being like you need to stay pretty, like you were losing so much weight and you like looked like so good, and like you also don't want to be out of shape and like you don't want to come back and be yeah, like struggling with the conditioning set. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna try this diet and I'm pretty much gonna just like have like one meal a day. And like this is like the definition of like
Wow.
Like unhealthy, like unhealthy.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and it didn't matter really like what it was, but I'm like, I can only have like one like small like meal a day and then like I'll stay fit. And so I pretty much like I don't know, starving sounds aggressive, but like I was definitely like not, I was just like not eating and I was very depleted and like deprived of like food. And I
Mm,
like basically got myself down to like the like lightest I've ever like weighed in my life. And I remember going in to see like our nutritionist and they were like, she was like, wow, you look so healthy. Like let's like do like your BMI scan, like see if we can get your like scores updated. And I'm like, okay, yeah, like let's do that. And she basically it like the test basically reported me as like it put me in the zone and because it had different zones and it was like it put me in peak athlete. It's basically the top like basically the healthiest like BMI you can have. And it just meant that I was like high muscle, low fat, pretty much is what the test was telling me. And it was so
wow.
interesting because when she told me that, I was like, I think if you asked me to jog a lap around the track, like I'm seriously think I would like pass out. Like I don't think I would be able to like do it because I'm so unhealthy. Like I'm so like deprived. And it was interesting too that people noticed that I like looked fitter and looked like
Mm,
leaner and my body type has never been prone to like really being like I'm not like lanky by any means. And so I've always been like more of an athletic, like kind of like curvy build. And so I think it was like a very noticeable change where I looked just like lean, like way leaner than I ever was. And so people are telling me like, you look so good, like you look so like healthy and like just getting compliments. And I was like fitting into
mm,
clothes that were like so much smaller than like my normal sizes. And I was like so like happy with how I looked like visually, but felt
mm,
so sick. Like I really
mm,
felt like I was always feeling really like just like dehydrated and feeling like I was walking around like Pepperdine's campus, like which is like just like crazy hills and stuff. And I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah.
I think I'm gonna like I'm like, I think I'm gonna pass out.
Oh
And
my
I
gosh.
look back on that and I'm like, it's so crazy how easy it is to get swept up in letting like the way you look like dictate like how you feel. But people who have gone through that know that it doesn't really feel good
Mm-mm.
to know that you're unhealthy. It's almost kind of like living this like double life of being like my body looks good but I'm actually like emotionally not okay, or
Mm,
like mentally I'm like not okay.
yeah.
But and there's just like a disconnect. And so I've had to change definitely the way, especially through like my back injury that has kind of like limited like what my output is. Like I've had to really check in with God about like, you know, am I like basically like, am I never gonna be like the athlete and like have like the, like the muscle that I used to and like feel as like confident about myself. And
Mm,
I'll be honest and say that like in this time of like kind of surrendering this area of my life to the Lord, I felt better about myself than I ever have. And that's just
mm,
something that comes from the Lord, really. Like, because
mm,
there's no other way to think about it other than that whole like God will change the way that you look at others, you look at yourself, and you look
mm,
at your life and the purpose for your life. And so I think that like God has just been like super real to me in that way. And that's why I really try to be like encouraging of I can kind of, I don't know, now definitely like mentoring youth for a while, I can kind of detect when things are like kind of off, and I just want to use it as an opportunity of like to remind people that like you are so like beautiful and like so
mm,
accepted for like who you are, and to let God into that area of your life, right? Like a lot of people
yeah.
don't want him to be a part of that because it's like,
Mm-hmm.
what does what I look like, have to do with like my faith? And it actually has a lot more to do with it than you would think. And I think that like there are also healthy ways for people who like do struggle with like weight, like like one of like the like things that's encouraged in the Bible is actually to show like like discipline, right? Like there's
Mm,
like times where it's like, oh, like you actually like self-control is like a good um like spiritual like practice for our lives. And so like God can actually like change the way that you feel about like your sense of like self and like your beauty and your weight, like the Bible actually speaks about these things. That's
Mhm.
like the moral of it is like the Bible can actually like educate us in these ways of like what we should think about ourselves, and Christian community like will pour into you in that same way. When you have friends that are really going after the Lord, like they'll
Yeah.
remind you of your worth, and they'll encourage you in a way that's uplifting and not like, you know, like defeating or giving you like, yeah, just like being like really rough. It's like, no, like we can like, you know, serve each other like in love and encourage each other in love. And yeah, that's just been super like good for me. Yeah, even in this like, yeah, just even in like recent seasons, just like understanding like this topic of like what is beauty and
Mm,
like what does the Lord say about how I look.
so
And
good.
so yeah.
I love how you said inviting God into like that insecurities or whatever we're kind of unhappy with or don't like too, because I remember listening to someone, and I think it was Sadie Robertson, and she was talking about how sometimes the thing we like don't like the most, or the thing we think is like our biggest weakness, God is actually going to use as our greatest strength. And I
Mm-hmm.
just love how like God's such a redeemer and in that. And even for me, like I had dyslexia growing up, and I still do, and it's something I struggle with, and I used to be really insecure about because I would like be in class and I could barely read, and then people were reading
Mm-hmm.
like chapter books, and I couldn't speak very well. I had like to work on my talking, and it's crazy how like now God uses my voice as like a means to like tell people about who he is. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just crazy how he like does that, and he does that for every single one of us. And so I
Yeah.
think like inviting God into the places where we maybe aren't as happy or we aren't as confident in like who
Mm-hmm.
we are, he can really just like turn that around and like use it for good and like show us like the power that it holds. And I just think he's so awesome that he does that. And I just love God and how, you know, we all were made so uniquely. And you're right, when you have friends and people uplifting you and, reminding you of who you were created to
Mm-hmm.
be, that it just makes a world of a difference.
Yeah, I agree. Totally. Oh, that's so good. I love that.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be on here. And I literally love everything you said. I want to keep talking more. So we'll definitely do another part two. There's so much more I want to say, but I just want to thank you so much for everything that you have done in my life and other people's lives, because pouring into the youth, like, it's just, it made it such a big difference in my life. Having a mentor to look up to and someone I could just like ask questions to.
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, I look up to you too, and I'm so stoked on this podcast. So thank you.
Oh, and last thing I'm gonna say is, Mandy got me one of the best gifts I think I've ever gotten. She got me like customized Love People hats, and I just remember seeing you wearing it for the first time and thinking, "Oh my gosh, like that's so crazy that it's the same thing." And then you're like, "Oh, it's custom," and I was like, "Oh, that is so cool." I just also just need to give you a shout out for that because that was cool.
Oh.
That's a good gift idea. If anyone needs any advice or ideas for a gift, personalized like merch, really good.
Such a good plug. Thanks.
Of course, of course. But yes, I hope you all have a great day. Hope this helped you guys and made you feel like you're not alone, because I think everyone walks through what it looks like to love yourself, but just to remember to invite God into those places, and also to remember who God says you are. He loves you, you're beautiful, you're a masterpiece, and he's going to use you for great things.